There's a financial leak in your life right now that has nothing to do with your spending. It's running in the background like a subscription you never signed up for, and the second you see it clearly, it will be impossible to unsee. You probably track your spending, maybe you have a budget or at least a rough sense of where money goes, but here's what almost nobody accounts for: the thing you want but haven't bought yet, the trip you're saving up for, the upgrade sitting on a mental wish list, the thing you'll finally get when you earn just a little more. You think those desires are neutral, waiting quietly until you decide. They are not. Every active desire in your mind is already costing you wealth before you spend a single dollar, and the mechanism behind it explains something that baffles most people: why lifestyle inflation almost never gets fixed by earning more, why the strict budgeter eventually makes the catastrophic impulse purchase after weeks of perfect discipline, and why the person who seems to earn moderately somehow always has financial breathing room, while everyone around them with higher incomes somehow always feels tight. The difference isn't income, it isn't willpower, it's something almost no one is measuring. Think about what a desire actually does the moment it enters your mind. It doesn't wait politely until you act on it. The moment it forms, it starts bending, quietly pulling your sense of identity towards someone who would logically own that thing, someone with slightly higher standards, someone who, you've already decided somewhere below conscious thought, deserves it. That isn't a metaphor, that's the actual mechanism by which lifestyle inflation begins, not at the checkout, not at the point of purchase. Months before it, in the slow, invisible process of becoming someone whose baseline expectation for a normal, acceptable life has quietly risen. You didn't overspend, you overwanted, and by the time the purchase happened, it wasn't even a real decision. It was an inevitability catching up to an identity that had already shifted. Consider someone who finally crosses 6 figures, the income level that was supposed to change everything. They budget carefully, they know the numbers, and yet within 18 months their savings rate is lower than it was at 70,000. The mystery isn't how they spent more. The mystery is how they felt justified spending more before they ever touched the money. They had desires running in the background: a better neighborhood, a different car, a certain kind of travel experience. The income increase didn't create those desires, it just removed the last remaining justification for not acting on them. The desire did the damage, the spending was just the receipt. This gets more uncomfortable when you look at what unresolved desire actually costs before any purchase happens. There's the mental bandwidth cost. Every active desire occupies cognitive space. It becomes a background process, something your brain returns to, prices out, justifies, debates, then suppresses, then returns to again. That is not neutral. That is decision fatigue accumulating in slow motion. And decision fatigue is the exact mental state in which financial discipline collapses. The strict budgeter who holds the line perfectly for 3 weeks and then makes the catastrophic impulse purchase almost always has an unresolved desire running somewhere underneath. Not necessarily for what they just bought, but the accumulated weight of suppressed wanting creates psychological pressure, and pressure finds release points, usually expensive ones. Then there is the identity drift. When you carry a desire long enough, it doesn't remain a want. It becomes evidence of who you're becoming. The person who will eventually do the renovation. The person whose wardrobe finally fits the life they're building. That identity shift is the real danger because it quietly raises your financial floor before a single dollar moves. The baseline of what you consider acceptable, normal, earned rises, and that rising floor is lifestyle inflation. Not the purchase that follows, the expectation that preceded it. Here is the inversion that almost no financial advice ever reaches. Most content tells you to manage your spending, track it, categorize it, cut it, and that isn't wrong. But it's solving the problem too late in the wrong place after the real damage has already been done. By the time money is in motion, the decision was made weeks or months earlier, not consciously, not deliberately, but in the quiet accumulation of desires that had nowhere to go except into eventual purchases. If spending is the fire, desire is the oxygen. You don't address a fire by analyzing the ash. The people who achieve genuine financial clarity, not just high income, but actual breathing room, actual margin, aren't just more disciplined at spending. They carry a small desire set, not because they suppress wanting, but because they've learned to interrogate desire before it takes root and starts the slow work of inflating who they believe they need to become. The question they ask is not, "Can I afford this?" That question arrives too late. The question they ask is, "What specifically do I expect this to change about my experience? And has anything I've bought in this category ever actually delivered that?" That is a different question, and it lands differently. The problem is that we live inside an economy specifically engineered to expand your desire set. not through advertising alone, though that's part of it, but through the architecture of comparison built into every platform you use. Your feed is an algorithm that has learned with precision what makes you feel your life is subtly insufficient. It doesn't show you what you have. It shows you the version of your life with one more thing. The gap between who you are and who you could be, curated, personalized, and delivered at the exact moment your resistance is lowest. This is not cynicism about technology. It is a description of the business model. Every platform is economically incentivized to produce desire in you because desire converts to attention and attention converts to spending. The desire itself is what's being manufactured. The product is the wanting. Which means maintaining a small desire set in the current environment isn't a preference or a personality type. It is an active countermove against a system designed at scale to prevent it. And here's the hard part: you can be fully aware of all of this and still not be immune. Awareness slows the formation of desire. It does not eliminate it. Someone who understands every psychological mechanism behind lifestyle inflation can still feel, for a fraction of a second while scrolling, that their apartment isn't quite right. The mechanism is older than any algorithm. It is built into the architecture of human attention. You cannot opt out of desire by knowing desire exists. But you can do something almost no one in personal finance ever recommends: a desire audit. Not a spending audit, those happen after the fact. A desire audit happens before, at the moment something enters your awareness as a want, before it becomes identity, before it raises your floor, before it runs in the background spending your cognitive resources. 3 questions, that's the entire practice. First, what specifically do I expect this to give me? Not the object, the outcome, the feeling, the change in how my life actually operates day to day. Second, has anything I've bought in this category ever actually delivered that outcome? Not satisfied me temporarily, but genuinely closed the gap I was trying to close. Third, and this one is where most desires quietly dissolve. Am I wanting this object, or am I wanting a version of myself that I believe would own this object? That last question is the sharpest edge of the audit, because most lifestyle inflation isn't driven by wanting things. It is driven by wanting to become someone who has arrived, someone whose life looks the way a life is supposed to look. And that imagined future self, with the renovated kitchen, the better neighborhood, the wardrobe that finally matches the career, is both infinitely compelling and financially bottomless. You cannot buy your way into becoming that person. The moment you arrive, the image updates, the gap reopens, the desire reforms, the subscription keeps running. The person who always seems to have financial breathing room isn't earning more, isn't sacrificing enjoyment, isn't living an austere life by force of will. They have simply learned to audit desire before it accumulates. Their desire set stays small, not because they want less from life, but because they've stopped treating every desire as proof that something is missing. They've started treating it as a question worth answering before it becomes a purchase worth making. That shift from desire as gap to desire as inquiry changes the entire financial equation, not by restricting spending, by never fully forming the desires that would have made the spending feel inevitable. Before this week ends, pick one desire you've been carrying for more than 2 weeks. Don't ask whether you can afford it. Ask what you actually believe it will change. Then ask whether that specific change has ever arrived through something you bought. The answer won't always stop the purchase, but it will stop the ones that were never really about the object in the first place. And those are the ones that cost the most, not in a single transaction, but in the slow inflation of who you believe you need to become before your life is enough. That's where most of the damage lies, not in the budget, in the wish list you forgot was already running.